So you can use types for function parameters and for the return value of the function. Now, to take it to the next level, what if there also were a function type itself? Now let me make it clear what I mean. Let's say we have a variable, combine values, and this variable by default has a type of any. Now, as you learned, any is not that useful. What I want to do eventually is I want to set combine values equal to add. So I want to store the add function, a pointer at this add function, in combine values, so that in the end we can console log combine values and execute combine values as a function to which I pass 8 and 8. Now if I save that and I execute this after compiling it, so if we compile this file and then we let this reload, we get 16 here. So that works, and we would expect it to work because that is normal JavaScript code. We can store a pointer at a function in another variable and then therefore execute this variable as a function because, well, it points at that function, right? So we can execute that function through that variable. The problem we have with this snippet here from a TypeScript perspective just is that combine values is any. So if I set combine values to a number here thereafter, of course, we can compile this, unfortunately, because TypeScript has no chance of detecting that this is unwanted or that this could cause a problem. But at runtime, we would get an error, because obviously we try to execute combine values as a function when it actually is a number. Now we want to avoid this, and for that we need to be clear that combine values will hold a function. Now a first step into that direction is that we set the type here to function. Function is a type provided by TypeScript in the end, and this makes it clear that whatever we store in here has to be a function. Therefore here I'm getting an error because 5 is a number and not a function. And if I comment this out, we can compile this, otherwise we would get an error during compilation, and now this again runs as expected. So that's good, but it's not perfect, because now we say this should be a function, but it could also set combine values equal to print result, for example, here. And of course, TypeScript would not complain because print result is a function. But of course, it's not a function that takes 2 arguments. So again, if I compile this, TypeScript will not complain. But if we reload, we see undefined here and result 8. So I don't get the result I want because I stored the wrong function in there. Again, it would be nice if TypeScript would tell us about that. TypeScript can't inform us about this because all we said to TypeScript is that we want to store a function in there, and this is clearly the case. So it would be good if we could be more precise regarding how the function should look like that we want to store in combine values. And that's where function types come into play. Function types are types that describe a function regarding the parameters and the return value of that function. A function type is created with this arrow function notation you know from JavaScript, or at least close to that notation. You don't add curly braces here because we aren't creating an arrow function here. We're creating a function type instead. Now on the right side of this arrow, you specify the return type of the function you eventually want to be able to store in here. And that should be number. Now with that we're saying combine values accepts any function that takes no parameters and then returns a number. Now that's of course not entirely what we want. We want to make sure that combine values takes a function or is able to store functions that take 2 numbers and return a number. Now for that we can add parameters here to this function type. We don't have to match the parameters names from up there, just the types. So we could have A, which should be of type number, and B, which should be of type number. And now what we're saying to TypeScript is that combine values should accept any function that takes 2 parameters, where each parameter is a number and where the function overall then returns a number. And that's why TypeScript does not complain about us storing add in combine values, because add is a function that perfectly satisfies this type definition. But it does complain about print result, because print result, as it tells us here, is a function of type 1 argument, which is a number, nothing is returned, whereas we actually expect to get a function with 2 arguments, where each argument is a number, and we also return a number. So we have a mismatch here, And if I would try to compile this, we therefore would get an error here, of course, in the compiler. And we only can fix this by removing this line of code. Now we are able to recompile this without errors, and now this runs as expected. So function types allow us to describe which type of function specifically we want to use somewhere, be that an expected value in a parameter, if we create a function with some callback, or like here, a variable.